The Boston Tea Party was a political protest that took place on December 16, 1773, in Boston, Massachusetts. This event was one of the most significant acts of defiance by American colonists against British rule and was a key catalyst leading to the American Revolution. The protest was carried out by a group known as the Sons of Liberty, disguised as Mohawk Indians, boarded 3 British ships and dumped 342 chests of British tea into Boston Harbor. This bold act was a response to the Tea Act of 1773, which was seen as an attempt by the British government to control the American tea trade and impose unjust taxation. To fully understand the Boston Tea Party, it is essential to examine the political, economic, and social factors that led up to it. The origins of the Boston Tea Party can be traced back to the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763. Britain had accumulated a large war debt and sought to recover its financial losses by taxing its American colonies. This led to a series of tax laws that were deeply unpopular among the colonists. The Sugar Act, 1764. The Sugar Act was one of the first major attempts by the British government to raise revenue from the colonies. It imposed taxes on sugar and molasses imported into the colonies, leading to widespread discontent. The Stamp Act, 1765. The Stamp Act required all legal documents, newspapers, and even playing cards to bear an official British stamp, proving that a tax had been paid. This sparked violent protests, the formation of the Stamp Act Congress, and the eventual repeal of the Act in 1766. The Townshend Acts, 1767. The Townshend Acts imposed duties on glass, paper, paint, and tea. These taxes reignited colonial anger and led to widespread boycotts of British goods. British troops were stationed in Boston to enforce order, leading to the Boston Massacre in 1770, where British soldiers fired on a crowd of colonists, killing 5 people. The Tea Act, 1773. The Tea Act was the direct cause of the Boston Tea Party. The act allowed the British East India Company to sell tea directly to the American colonies, bypassing colonial merchants. Although the tea was actually cheaper under this law, colonists saw it as a British attempt to establish a monopoly and reinforce their right to tax the colonies without representation. This led to increased tensions and calls for direct action. The Boston Tea Party, events of December 16, 1773. By December 1773, tensions in Boston were at a boiling point. British officials insisted that the taxed tea be unloaded, while Patriot leaders like Samuel Adams and John Hancock demanded that it be sent back to England. 1. The arrival of the tea ships. In November 1773, 3 British ships, the Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver, arrived in Boston Harbor carrying shipments of British East India Company tea. According to colonial law, any ship that docked was required to unload its cargo within 20 days, or the goods would be confiscated. Governor Thomas Hutchinson, a loyalist to the British Crown, refused to let the ships leave without unloading the tea. Meanwhile, the Sons of Liberty, a secret organization of colonial activists, were determined to prevent the tea from being brought ashore. 2. The night of the protest. On the evening of December 16, 1773, a mass meeting was held at the Old South Meeting House in Boston. Thousands of angry colonists gathered to discuss their next course of action. Samuel Adams declared that the time for talk was over, and shortly afterward, a group of about 100 men, disguised as Mohawk Indians, marched toward the harbor. 3. Destruction of the tea. The disguised protesters boarded the 3 ships and began breaking open chests of tea and dumping them into the harbor. The destruction was carried out in an orderly manner, with strict instructions to avoid damaging anything other than the tea. Over the course of 3 hours, the men destroyed 342 chests of tea, which weighed about 90,000 pounds, 45 tons, worth approximately 10,000 pounds at the time, millions of dollars today. 4. Public reaction. The Boston Tea Party had both supporters and critics. Many colonists viewed it as a bold stand for liberty, while others, including Benjamin Franklin, felt the destruction of private property was too extreme. The British government, however, saw it as an act of rebellion that needed to be punished severely. Consequences of the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party had immediate and long-term consequences that significantly altered the course of American history. 1. The Coercive Acts, 1774. In response to the Boston Tea Party, the British Parliament passed a series of laws known as the Coercive Acts, also called the Intolerable Acts by the colonists. These included the Boston Port Act, closed the Boston Harbor until the destroyed tea was paid for. The Massachusetts Government Act took away self-government in Massachusetts, giving more control to the British governor. The Administration of Justice Act allowed British officials accused of crimes in the colonies to be tried in England instead of America. The Quartering Act required colonists to house and provide supplies for British soldiers. These laws outraged the American colonists and united them against British rule. 2. The formation of the First Continental Congress. The Coercive Acts led to the formation of the First Continental Congress in September 1774. Delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies, excluding Georgia, met in Philadelphia to discuss a coordinated response to British aggression. This was a crucial step toward American independence. 3. Escalation to the American Revolution. The Boston Tea Party was one of the key events that led to the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War in 1775. The Battle of Lexington and Concord in April 1775 marked the first shots of the Revolution. By 1776, the colonies declared their independence from Britain, culminating in the birth of the United States of America. Legacy of the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party remains one of the most iconic moments in American history. It symbolizes the fight against taxation without representation and the struggle for self-governance. Today, it is remembered as an act of defiance that paved the way for American independence and democracy. Modern impact. The Tea Party movement. In modern times, the Tea Party movement, a political movement in the U.S., has used the Boston Tea Party as a symbol of opposition to high taxes and government overreach. Annual reenactments. Every year in Boston, the event is commemorated with reenactments, drawing visitors from around the world. Educational significance. The Boston Tea Party is widely studied in American schools as a crucial event leading to the American Revolution. Conclusion. The Boston Tea Party was not just a protest against tea taxes. It was a bold statement against British oppression and a major step toward American independence. It showed the world that the American colonists were willing to fight for their rights, even at great risk. This act of defiance sent a clear message. America would not be ruled without representation, and the seeds of revolution had been firmly planted.